Reddit, what's your family's dark secret? NSFW. My mother was a groupie for Creedence Clearwater. There's 5 kids in my family and none of know who my older sister's biological father is. We all like to speculate about it except for my mother and older sister. One of my aunties was a very ill woman like oxygen. To get out of the chair, going upstairs is a 1 a week thing if lucky. Her son is a prick. When she refused to pay his drug debt off for the nth time, because she had no more money, he poured petrol all over the house and threatened to burn her to death. The fumes were enough for her to pass out. He panicked, took a handful of pills, then panicked at that decision and called himself an ambulance, didn't even mention his mum. Police turned up with the paramedics, arrested him and took her in the ambulance. I disowned him instantly. My uncle was apparently in prison for a couple years for sexual assault. No one ever spoke of it, and I didn't find out until after he suddenly died years later. He suffered from schizophrenia, and when his wife left him after years of refusing treatment, he wandered off into the woods and froze to death. Now we don't talk about either of those things. Edit. Oh, and my father only has 1 testicle. The other one never descended, and my grandma either didn't notice or was too embarrassed to take him to see a doctor about it. My family was smuggling diamonds in the Apeldoorn area of the Netherlands from the late 1800s up until WW till they got pretty rich off it too, until the Nazis invaded and took most of them into concentration camps. My great-grandfather, while on the trains to a camp, convinced himself and several others to jump from the trains. As they did, they were gunned down by Nazi soldiers, and my great-grandfather was one of the only survivors. My mom's parents were uncle and niece. Her dad married his brother's daughter. Their family was on the East Coast and they ran away together to California. They had 2 kids, my mom and her older brother. All of us are a product of incest. My grandfather's uncle fell in love with an underage girl. He got drafted into the war and had to leave. When he came home, he found out she had died. He dug up her grave and kept her dead body in his bathtub. We just don't talk about it, and I've never met that side of my family. Edit. First off, holy shit, I did not expect my comment to take off as much as it did. I went to bed and woke up this morning to a million emails. Secondly, I called my mom to see if I could get some answers to all of your questions. Turns out the guy was actually my grandmother's cousin. He was a Marine in the Korean War. Apparently when he got back, he was told she had died. My mom has no idea how old she was or what she died of. He became so distraught he went and dug up her grave, put her in his bathtub, and kept trying to revive her. He was discovered only a couple days later. My mom says it was a small town, and once her freshly dug up grave was discovered, they just put 2 and 2 together. No one talks about it. Only my mom, obviously. My dad is abusive and keeps my mother in debt, so she can't take us and leave. We look like a perfect middle class family from the outside, but boy is it shit on the inside. Before the days of Ancestry.com, Link, and whatnot, my cousin and his wife went to Ireland with idyllic intentions of tracing our family heritage. They never spoke of it again until years later, when they admitted it repeatedly dead-ended at mental hospitals and jails, and they got so discouraged they quit. My grandparents swapped spouses. My grandmother on my mother's side had an affair with my grandfather on my father's side. Everyone got divorced, and then my grandfather on my mother's side fell in love and married my grandmother on my father's side. Family reunions were fun. My great-great-grandma went out to dinner with her husband one night. Her husband thought she was looking at other guys and brought her to a hotel room nearby and slit her throat. He left her to die, but she survived and then escaped and left him. We didn't find this out until a few years ago through an old newspaper. My mom was raped when she was 14. Her dad, my granddad, tracked the guy down and shot him dead in a bar. My uncle, the Protestant minister, was doing wealth management on the side, turned out to be other people's wealth into his pockets, got caught, and killed himself before they arrested him. Turns out my grandfather had been molesting my aunts as kids and other female cousins of mine. Finally one of them mentioned it to her husband and he called him and said either turn yourself in or I'm calling the cops or something similar. Now my grandpa is in prison. Totally out of nowhere for me too. He also said that if more victims came forward he wouldn't deny it. Mostly pissed that, if you really think about it, he got away with it. He's in prison now sure, but he was already dying. So just now on his deathbed he finally goes to prison for what he did. Also pissed that no one in my family seems to care, and they're all trying to make excuses for him. My great-great-grandfather once got into a fight at a bar over a woman, and murdered a man in said fight. It being the late 1800s, he moved a couple states south, and changed his surname, which is how a family of European Spanish mutts ended up with a Scottish surname. My dad's family is messed up. His cousin told her husband that, if he didn't stop smoking she'd divorce him. So instead of quitting he lied about having cancer. When he went to the hospital he told her he was getting treatment, but instead smoked at the hospital. This all happened before I was born, but yeah, her husband lied about having cancer for almost a decade. My dad is the only normal one in the family. Great, you made it to the end. Now smash that like button and subscribe for even more videos like this one.